Hello everyone, it is LB 3-Point Man, and I am back again with another draft profile video. Once again, these are made with the support of SBNation and Cincyjungle, so a big thanks to them. This is my fourth draft profile, so if this is the first one you are watching, be sure to check out the first three on my channel. Now let's take a look at a player that has largely been overlooked due to coming from a smaller school in a non-Power 5 conference. That player is Toledo wide receiver Diontae Johnson. Johnson has a lot of traits that are highly coveted by teams, and still has a lot of room to grow into a more complete player. However, it is an incredibly deep wide receiver draft, and it is hard for any one player to stand out. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Johnson ended up being one of those players that emerges from the pack and succeeds. Now let's take a look at his overall athleticism. Diontae Johnson is the first offensive player that I am doing a video on this year. Also, unlike all of the other players I have done videos on so far, Diontae Johnson is not an elite athlete. Not only is he not an elite athlete, he's actually below average across the board. If we look at his college dominator rating, which is percentage of team receiving yards, and his college yards per catch rating, which is self-explanatory, we can see that he at least had elite production in college. Johnson's athleticism is certainly concerning, but it is not necessary with the way he wins. He also hits the general minimums that are necessary to succeed at wide receiver at the other measurements. Johnson may not be the best athlete, but I don't believe it is bad enough to knock him off someone's board. Now, let's move on to the tape study to look at some of the strengths and weaknesses on tape. First one I want to talk about is his solid stop and start ability that helps him generate yards after the catch. Looking at Diontae Johnson's speed numbers, you wouldn't expect him to be a guy that is quickly able to separate, but in reality it is one of his biggest strengths. He seems to always have a good understanding of where he is on the field and where the opponents are in the field as well. He uses that ability well and is able to make people miss. This also helps him with his route running, which is solid but could be improved in terms of polish. Taking a look at some of the tape, we have two plays where he comes back to catch the ball, and then he is able to make the defender miss, or in the case of the second play, make two defenders miss on his way to the end zone. Next, let's take a look at one of his biggest weaknesses, which is the fact that he sometimes struggles to catch passes which are outside of his frame. What I mean by that is that he struggles when he has to extend or reach back for passes, which, if I may level with you for a second, Toledo's quarterback was not particularly good in 2018, so he had to deal with a pretty good amount of these. Now, most likely this is a problem that can be fixed with a lot of practice and a jugs machine, and will be helped by a quarterback with better placement, but it is worth touching on. Now I have three play examples for you on tape. In this first one, he gets open deep but has to stretch up for the ball and is unable to haul it in. In the second and third play, they are both similar in being poorly placed passes behind Johnson. However, you'd still like to see him haul those passes in, as they could have been big plays. Next, I would like to talk about what I believe is his next big strength, which is his play speed, which, as you may have noticed, was not very good test-wise. It was around average. However, I believe that he is a lot faster than the speed that he tested at. I believe he has speed enough to be a deep threat to take passes to the house and go along with all the other positive aspects of his game, which is very important so that way corners don't feel comfortable sitting on the short and intermediate routes, so he can be effective at all levels of the field. I would like to note, of course, that it is difficult to tell for sure, as a lot of his tape is against players that will not be playing in the NFL, which can definitely help him look better. If we take a look at this play, we can see he's able to just get a free release and simply run right past the cornerback for the easy deep completion and touchdown. Continuing the conversation is his next weakness, which is the fact that he played against weaker competition in college and then ended up testing poorly. The smaller school guy would have liked to have seen better testing, as there will always be concerns about whether he'll be able to succeed with his play styles against guys that are as good or better athletes than him, which will be the case in the NFL. I don't have a clip for this, as I couldn't find a good example specifically, but it always has to be a concern for any small school player attempting to make it in the NFL. Next, I would like to bring up a strength in his overall release game. Release is something that is sometimes forgotten by casual fans or overlooked as not that important. Release being how well is a wide receiver able to neutralize the cornerback's press and even flip it and gain an advantage from it. If we look at playing wide receiver as a battle with a cornerback, then we can see exactly how important the release is, as it's the first move in the battle and it can decide the winner before the battle is even fully started. And it is a move that Diontae Johnson is able to win a lot. He has a variety of moves to win off a press, and it gives him the upper hand a lot of the time. What I really love is the way he varies the speed with which he releases, as it leaves it unpredictable and makes him much harder to stop. This is one of those small things that separate the good receivers from the great receivers. Since it's so short, I got several clips of him releasing that I liked. I just want you to look at the variety of ways he wins and the different speeds with which he does it. Then I want to take a look at this last play against Miami, where he demolishes the corner trying to get his hands on him, and the quarterback throws it up into essentially double coverage the other way. Now moving on from one of the most underrated aspects to a wide receiver's game, to one of the most overrated aspects of a wide receiver's game, is a wide receiver's blocking ability. Now, there are two types of bad wide receiver blockers. the ones who don't really want to and just don't do it, and ones who try but just aren't good at it. If we look at this first play, we can see Diontae Johnson working hard to block downfield for his quarterback. Then if we move on and we look at the next play, we see him attempting to block a defender for the running back, and he's just unable to stop him much at all, and the defender ends up making the tackle. The final strength that I'd like to discuss is one that indicates that one of the weaknesses that we already talked about may not be as big of a concern as it could be. It is the fact that he had one of the best games of his 2018 season, and even his entire career against the University of Miami, and a decent amount of his production came against the draftable talent in cornerback Michael Jackson. Now, Jackson is not the best corner in the draft, or even close to it, but he is at minimum draftable, and possibly in the top 100 picks, which is a great indicator for Johnson that he was able to succeed against him. When watching a small school player, you want someone that not only succeeded against the smaller schools, but when he got a chance against the bigger schools, he was still able to produce. If we take a look, I have two plays here, and Johnson wins in similar ways in both of them, and they both highlight how well he wins in small ways. He's able to win off the line, and then he's able to win with leverage and keep Jackson an arm length away and win to the sideline to make two smooth catches for long gains. Now, I'd like to finish and talk about my overall thoughts on Johnson. Johnson is a small school player who didn't test particularly well and does have some legitimate concerns with his game, with his struggle to catch passes outside of his frame, his lack of polish as a route runner, and his tendency to catch with his body. However, despite all these very legitimate concerns, I am a huge fan of his game. He's able to win in a lot of ways, and he does so many small things exactly right that so many of the top receivers in the NFL do as well. It is betting on an outlier to expect him to have any success in the NFL, so I likely wouldn't want to take him in round 1 or 2. As a depth player though, with room to grow however, I like the idea of taking him more and more the further we get down, around the mid to late round 3. Of course, I don't have access to interview rooms, but he seems to have the necessary dedication to become one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. Now on to my comp for Diontae Johnson. There was no perfect comp for him, however I was looking for a player with similar athleticism and production who also did a lot of the small things right. The comp I finished with is wide receiver Golden Tate. Now Tate is a little bit better than an athlete and a more polished route runner, but that wasn't the case when he first entered the league. However, they are similar production-wise from college as weapons, as receivers, and in the return game, and both had a lot of good traits to build upon coming from college to the NFL. Now to wrap up, I would like to say thank you to everyone who watched. Feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel and put in the comments what other players you'd like me to do, and if there's any interest in continued videos after the draft. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed yourself and learned something new.